Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, we're going to get into the top storylines for all the teams in the AFC South. That would be the Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts, and Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to get into that and more in just a second. But like every episode, I open up with the Get It Off Your Chest segment. And this one's a little bit different. They're not going to talk football in this one. We're going to talk a little bit of I'm talking to my brothers and sisters in this one. Now, the straightest way or the best path to get somewhere is a straight line. I'm going somewhere, so just follow me. But, with a particular person currently, it seems like he's just scribbling all over the place. That would be Mr. Stephen A. Smith. Now, I've talked about Stephen A. Smith once before on my show, and shall do it again because it is my show and I can do what I please. But in this situation, he's at it again. I understand you have opinions and I understand you have things you want to say, but, when you're talking about someone and you continually go at someone and ask people all around about someone and continue to disparage their name without talking to them, at some point that's wrong. It is. It is. And, whether you agree or disagree with Cheryl Swoops, to continue to bring her name up, to continue to talk about her, denigrate her, disrespect her, for her opinions, and bring on people to further disrespect her. Like, you have someone on that basically brings up a private conversation that was had. Whether you like the apology or not, that is not to you. That's up to the person that received the actual apology, not you. But to continue to do that, continue to bring up her name, continue to disparage her name, I think at this point, it is beyond ridiculous at this point. It hurts my heart to see this because you can quite easily bring on Cheryl Swoops to go ahead and dead the issue. But rather than that, you'd rather sensationalize the issue or the point that you're trying to make, which, at this point, you've done it over and over again. And it's pretty obvious that you don't necessarily watch WNBA basketball on a consistent basis like me and a lot of other people do. So to me, it would be smart to bring someone on that knows more about it, not to continue to talk about it and try to impress your opinions on someone that's been there and watched it. I digress though. But this further hurts me because you're an elder statesman in the sports game. You are. You are. You have been there for what, 20, 30 years. You've been there as long as I've, about more than half of my life. You have been in the sports world, if not longer than that. At this point, should know how to handle situations, should know how to, this is not making anything any better by continuing to go down this path. I know you have a show. I know you have followers that love what you do and things like that, but I'm going to call wrong when it's wrong. And to me, whether you agree with Cheryl Swoop's opinions or not, to continue to go down this path and call her this and call her that and all those different things, when she actually admitted she did make a mistake on something and apologized to that person about it, and they squashed it, but yet you continue to bring it up again, over and over and over again to hit your point. And at this point, it's pretty sad and ridiculous at this point, and it's frustrating and it's disheartening to hear that a grown man, as my elder, an elder in the sports game, I have to continue to talk about like he's doing stuff like a child, because right now he's performing like a child. It has to stop. It has to stop. It's frustrating, and no. Be a grown man. Talk to Cheryl Swoops. Bring her on your show. Since you've so much talked about her on your show so much, you may as well bring her on your show and let her talk for herself, as opposed to you continually talking for her, and squash it like grown people do, instead of continue to inflame it over I said my piece. That's what I had to say. All right, that's the get off your chest segment for this episode. Had to get that off my chest because it's so frustrating to continually see this foolishness over and over and over again. And I'm over it. I am. I'm truly over it. All right. Now, this episode, we're going to talk about the AFC South teams, and we're going to talk about the different storylines that are out there. And before we go to commercial break, of course, we're going to start off with the Houston Texans. We're going to kind of go over their storylines. They don't have as many pressing storylines, I would say, as the other teams in the division. However, there is some storylines going on. One of those storylines is the expectation. Now, the expectation for the Houston Texans last year was that they were going to finish last in the division. No one really had them winning the division, not a lot of people at all. However, they proved us all wrong with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud, a rookie defensive lineman that was a leader there in Will Anderson Jr., and also a rookie head coach in D'Amico Ryans. They won 10 games, made it to the playoffs, and were a great story. But what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? Which is what's going to happen with the Houston Texans this year, because a lot of people are looking at them and a lot of people expect them to do very, very well this season. Of course, they did add a few different pieces. They added Stephon Diggs, wide receiver from Buffalo Bills. They traded for him, converted his deal into a 1-year deal for him this year. So he's probably going to be on his best behavior for those that continue to talk about him and his behavior. That was for y'all. But he's on a 1-year deal to basically show what all he can do and, get that next payday for himself. Also, they traded for Joe Mixon, gave him a 3-year extension. So it's just going to be interesting, with the added pieces. You had Azeez Al-Shire defensively. You had Danico Autry defensively, the interior defensive line. Of course, he's going to be suspended for the first 6 games. Then you have, you bring in a couple former first-round draft picks in Jeff Okudah and C.J. Henderson, which C.J. Henderson got cut, by the way. You bring in all these pieces. You bring in Danielle Hunter. Can't forget that guy. You bring him in as well. All these different expectations for the Houston Texans compared to last year. How are they going to live up to those? That's something to pay attention to. It's something to keep an eye on. Do they feel the pressure at some point during this season with the expectations that are on them, especially with the young leaders on this team, C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson Jr., of course, Tank Dell coming back this year after breaking his leg, closing out the end of the season. And then also another thing is defensively, I talked about the pieces they added. But you also got to factor in there the piece that they didn't add, which is a veteran corner opposite of Derek Stingley Jr. Well, now, Derek Stingley Jr. has gotten progressively better and better, and he is definitely a corner that is on the rise. However, on the opposite side, you just don't know exactly what to expect. They did bring in, like I mentioned, Jeff Okudah, C.J. Henderson. C.J. Henderson did not make the team, out of camp. I believe Jeff Okudah is still there. However, I do think Kamari Lassiter, the second-round pick out of Georgia this draft, should probably more than likely will be the starter. With that being said, people are going to go at him. He's going to get targeted, folks. So it's going to be interesting just to see how well he handles that. How well he does in terms of, just being a guy with a target on his back. Now, he does come from the University of Georgia, folks. Now, let's get this right. He does come from the University of Georgia. So it doesn't mean that he hasn't had a target on his back before in terms of teams or things like that. But he has had the pleasure of having one of the best, Georgia always has a deep defensive line, always gets pressure on the quarterback, always has good linebackers. So it's just going to be interesting just to see how well he does once the season starts and once there's a target on him from opposing teams that don't want to go at Derek Stingley Jr. We'll see what happens when that happens. Of course, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to dive into the Tennessee Titans and the storylines there on touring the AFC South. We'll be right back.
EDO Beard Butter and EDO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off on these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get this the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All right, and we are back on touring the AFC South. While we're at commercial break, I did check out something. The Houston Texans named their captains. Guess who one of their captains is? That would be wide receiver Stephon Diggs. There you go. All right, moving on to the Texans. So from the Texans to the Titans, of course. And last year wasn't necessarily the greatest for the Tennessee Titans. Did not finish very well. I'll take that back. They did finish on a high note in knocking the Jacksonville Jaguars out of the playoffs. However, did not finish well overall. But there is expectations. They spent $228 million this offseason to make this team better. But there are still questions and storylines to watch. One of those storylines, that would be Mr. Will Levis. Now, Will Levis came into this season not necessarily a guy that was going to play. They were going to go at Ryan Tannehill. I guess let him play out the string and then go from there. But Ryan Tannehill got hurt. They did not want to go with Malik Willis, so they went with the rookie in Will Levis. Now, Will Levis got his first start on October 29th against the Falcons, threw for 238 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Looked really good that game. Looked pretty good, but to finish the season, 4 TDs and 4 interceptions, had a great comeback against the Miami Dolphins. That was on, I believe, Monday Night Football. But other than that, didn't necessarily finish the way probably he wanted to. Overall 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions for his time as starting quarterback last season. So going into this offseason, I'm just also going to put out there too, he didn't necessarily have the greatest amount of weapons in terms of, he had DeAndre Hopkins, but, Traylon Burks wasn't necessarily healthy, I believe at that time. Tight end position, was kind of a little bit unsettled. And of course, you're in an offense that wasn't a pass-first offense. It's more of a run-first offense. So this season, you come into this season with, you add a Calvin Ridley from the Jaguars. You add a Tyler Boyd from the Cincinnati Bengals. You bring in a Tony Pollard. Of course, plenty mentioned that, Derrick Henry is not here. And with the Tennessee Titans, of course, so some are either mad about that or happy about that just because, it's time to move forward, unfortunately, for some Titans fans that love Derrick Henry. It was just time to move forward to a different era and angle for the offense. So, and then also you bring in as offensive coordinator, not offensive coordinator, but head coach, Brian Callahan, who was the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. And now you have a pass-first offense, which, is going to allow the Tennessee Titans to know more about Will Levis. Now, keep this in mind. He is a second-round draft pick. So, with that being said, he is actually going to, he's on a 4-year deal, essentially. He doesn't get 5 years, a 5th-year option like a first-round draft pick does. So, this is a very, very important year for the Titans to find out, is Will Levis the guy? They've surrounded him with pieces. Like I mentioned, you got Ridley, you got Pollard, you got Tyler Boyd, one of the best slot guys in the game. And you also added Lloyd Cushenberry, the starting center, one of the best centers out there on the market. You brought in J.C. Latham, as a tackle. I mean, you brought in all these different pieces, and it's going to be something that's going to allow the Titans to find out if Will Levis is the guy, or if they need to go into next year and get another quarterback. So that right there is going to be something to watch, just his progression. And they don't need him to be a superstar. They just need him to be solid. Be solid at quarterback. That's it. Not the guy to just throw it all over the yard and do all those different things. They just need him to be solid at quarterback and don't turn the ball over. Make the plays that are there. That's it. If he makes a few spectacular plays, then hey, he does. But other than that, just be solid. All right. And then the other thing to look at is how quickly this defense gels. I mean, people talk about the pieces added offensively, but defensively, they've added a lot of pieces too. I mean, just look before camp, or during camp, I should say. The Titans added Quandre Diggs, they added Jamal Adams, they added Ernest Jones. Those are three pieces that probably could be three key pieces for this team this season that they added during camp. Think about that. So, they have to mesh and they have to get better in terms of knowing each other on the field, on the fly, essentially. So that'll be something to watch, how they mesh and come together. And I didn't even mention the acquisition of Chidobe Awuzie from the Cincinnati Bengals, the signing of him, and then also the trade for L'Jarius Sneed from the Kansas City Chiefs. All those different pieces, and especially in the back end, a lot of those pieces are in the back end of the defense, the secondary. So it's just gonna be interesting to see how they all mesh, how they all learn each other and play together as one on the football field. One man, one sound. Taking it back to the drumline days. I know folks know that one, but yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how they all come together and play as a team together on the field. Each and every Sunday, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be some hiccups of them trying to learn each other and learn their abilities and learn what all each other can do. So moving on, we got the next team up. That would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Storyline here. Can Trevor step up? Now, plenty have accused me of being hard on Trevor Lawrence. And I am at times, because he is the number 1 overall draft pick from 4 years ago. So, he was tabbed as this generational quarterback, but we haven't necessarily seen generational play. So, excuse me if I am a little tough on him at times, but, the expectation is that he was going to be this generational quarterback. We just have not seen it in the NFL. Now, the first year, I get it. Urban Meyer wasn't, what it was supposed to be, and it was a mess, and is what it is. But you have to also take a look at just the inconsistencies the last 2 years under Doug Peterson. I mean, he had a slow start to the 2022 season and then caught fire down the stretch, helped lead them to the playoffs. He wasn't the main reason, but he was very much a reason that they made the playoffs in the 2022 season. 2023 season comes out better and then ends the season on sour note and doesn't necessarily play well. Now, some will tab that towards injuries, some will tab that towards offensive line, and I get that. Yeah, you definitely had that, but some of that's on Trevor Lawrence as well. That just is what it is. So, he has 58 touchdowns, 39 interceptions during his career. So those numbers, okay, I get it. Those numbers don't look bad, but it's just the fact of how those numbers are compiled, not necessarily that they're numbers. You can't just look at the stats when it comes to players, folks. You can't. You got to actually watch the game. So, he's being paid like a top quarterback. I didn't mention he did get an extension this offseason that makes him one of the top paid quarterbacks in the NFL. So for those that saying Dak Prescott doesn't deserve a top contract, you're looking at a guy that hasn't really accomplished a ton either and still got a top contract. All I'm saying. But he has to perform well this year. He did get a few pieces added, and he did lose Calvin Ridley, but he did get a few pieces added in Gabriel Davis from the Buffalo Bills and Brian Thomas Jr. in the draft. So it'll be interesting just to see how this team develops, how Trevor Lawrence does in terms of taking the reins and taking his game up another level, or if he does or does not do that this year. Another thing to watch is can Ryan Nielsen make this defense great? Now, Ryan Nielsen, for those that aren't aware, came over to the Jacksonville Jaguars from the Atlanta Falcons this offseason to be their defensive coordinator. there was a coaching change in Atlanta, so he was free. So with that being said, he made Atlanta a top 10 defense at one point during the 2023 season. Had a guy named Jesse Bates back there. Didn't necessarily have a great pass rush either. Keep that in mind. So now he's coaching the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker on both sides. He didn't have that in Atlanta, but he does have that in Jacksonville. And it's going to be interesting just to see how he's able to kind of deploy them, along with Eric Armstead, who was brought over from the San Francisco 49ers to beef up their interior offensive line. He does have a safety in Andre Cisco that is very, very talented, could play that Jesse Bates style role. It's going to be interesting to see how he deploys him. Got Darnell Savage, who they brought over, I thought was brought over as a safety, was actually brought over as a a nickel back for them. That'll be interesting as well. It's just to be interesting just to see how he deploys the weapons that he has. He has some young players, and he also has some veterans on this team that can actually get out there and do some things. So it'll just be interesting just to see. And, he definitely has some toys to play with to make this defense a top 10 defense. And it would not surprise me if he is able to do so. All right, we're going to take another quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the last and final team of the AFC South. That would be the Indianapolis Colts on touring the AFC South.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on touring the AFC South. And like I mentioned before the commercial break, we will be talking about the Indianapolis Colts to finish out the show and the storylines there. And we got to start with none other than Mr. Anthony Richardson. Now, Anthony Richardson did not finish the season last year healthy. He played 4 games, and, just to be honest, he didn't probably finish a solid 4 games because I believe he left one of those games too, or a couple of those games too. He has to stay healthy. Last year, of course, they were able to overcome that. Gardner Minshew came in and played somewhat well for them, and they almost made the playoffs, but they lost to the Houston Texans in a game that was for the division. So that hurts. But going into this season, they're hoping that Anthony Richardson does not hurt in terms of missing games. Because if he does, they don't have Gardner Minshew, but they have Joe Flacco. I will say he is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Did good things for the Cleveland Browns last year. Won comeback player of the year, I believe, last year. But, Joe Flacco is going to be a guy that can come in and give you a few interceptions too. And he isn't the threat with his legs that Anthony Richardson is. So the offense changes should Joe Flacco jump in there and, be the quarterback. And another thing to mention when it comes to Anthony Richardson, his progression in the offense is going to be interesting to watch. Now, he's done a few things that have done well. Throwing the football, threading, the needle where the ball needs to be, and then also, just reading the defenses. However, he also has done some things that are evident of a rookie quarterback. Now, essentially, he's going to be a rookie quarterback this year because, like I mentioned, he played 4 games, but technically didn't finish all 4 games. So, It's just going to be interesting to watch the progression, see how he learns, see how he develops, see what all he can be. Because if he plays up to his potential, the Colts are going to be something serious, especially with Michael Pittman Jr. I do like Josh Downs. Once he is able to come back, by the way, he is nursing an ankle injury. I do like A.D. Mitchell as well, which, A.D. Mitchell did go to high school, maybe 5-10 minutes from me, Cambridge High School. Yeah, I will shout them out on the air. But yeah, definitely it's going to be interesting just to watch and see how he develops, what things he's able to do, what things he is able to not do, and just how that his acumen develops on the field as the season goes on. I mean, of course, with any quarterback, not every quarterback jumps on the field and just plays well off top. It just doesn't happen that way. So, I mean, it could for him, but not every quarterback. So, it may take some time for Anthony Richardson to get better, to progress as the quarterback. The Indianapolis Colts. Just hopefully for the Indianapolis Colts, he stays healthy this season. And another issue or another thing to watch, another storyline, is can staying pat work? Now, for the Indianapolis Colts, they did not really add anybody this offseason outside of Joe Flacco as a backup quarterback and Raekwon Davis as an interior defensive lineman, maybe a backup, basically. That was it. That was it, pretty much. None of the big swings that they took landed. It is what it is, or big punches, I should say. So right now they're coming back with the same secondary they came back with last year, essentially. Aside from some draft picks, they have Juju Brents, which he's a 6'3", 198-pound corner. That if you look at him in Gus Bradley's defense, he could be the Richard Sherman of that defense. On the opposite side, nobody knows who's going to show up there. Now, I know I see a name that's on the roster in the depth chart, but we don't know if that's going to be the guy. We don't know if he's going to be the guy to kind of steady the ship on that opposite side. Now, they do have one of the best slot corners in the NFL, if not the best one, in Kenny Moore. He definitely is the real deal. But you have to have somebody on that opposite side. Kenny Moore is not a guy that lines up outside too very often. So it's going to be interesting just to see what happens, how they make it happen, and what they're able to do with that staying power in the secondary. Also, of course, they do have Nick Cross back there. And the safety position is a little bit interesting. So that'll be something to watch as well. That's my biggest concern with them staying put is that they didn't add much to their secondary, which they did have some blown plays, some interesting scenarios that happened back there. And then when Juju Brents was hurt, it wasn't necessarily the prettiest of things. Oof. But yeah, so that's my storylines for this 2024 seasons for the AFC South. If you have any other storylines or anything like that, hey, feel free to reach out to me. I am on the Artist Formula on his Twitter at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82 on the Artist Formula on his Twitter. Word to Prince, one of the greatest artists of all time. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. You name it, we are there. Go ahead, subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Leave a comment as well. I'd greatly appreciate it. And also, while you're subscribing, you can subscribe to Touring the AFC South through the Mike Patton Network, which is on YouTube. You can definitely do that. Go ahead and hit that bell so that you don't miss any episodes when they are produced. I want to thank you all for your time today, tuning in to Touring the AFC South. We're out. Peace.